names in the space. I think we have a good mix of some of the larger names and some of the smaller names in the space. And just to give some of the key highlights from the piece, for Atai Life Sciences, we raised our price target in the piece from 40 to 50. And I think the main reason was because we view the platform as being essentially validated by the COMP360 data and the phase 2b positive outcome. And with Atai having this broad platform looking at basically a number of different psychedelic mechanisms, we felt like they were best positioned. We reevaluated our platform value, and we increased the platform value, which is the main reason why we increased our price target. In the nearer term, Atai, most of the readouts or the near-term readouts are going to be more so on the non-psychedelic side. But I think over time, I think as folks kind of take a closer look at this, I think one of the most interesting comments they made was that they're looking at, potentially having psilocybin as kind of a sort of an inducing, use psilocybin to induce remission in these difficult to treat mood disorders, and then use some of these shorter acting psychedelics to kind of maintain remission, maybe something like DMT or maybe some of these different mechanisms that can maybe maintain the remission, something like R-ketamine. So I actually thought that was a really interesting comment that they made during their earnings call back in the middle of November. And of course, we covered Compass Pathways. We did raise our price target to 120 from 100 in this piece. And the revision reflected entirely the positive data, but we already had an 85% probability of success in TRD, and I think we were validated on the data that was read out. The reason for our increase was because we built in PTSD. Compass is going to be running a phase 2 trial in PTSD. Hopefully we'll see some safety data on that study sometime in 2022. They also have a number of investigator-initiated studies that they're running, or that the investigators are running in things like anorexia, body dysmorphic disorder, and bipolar type 2 depression. We have some built in for those indications as well, primarily though anorexia and body dysmorphic disorder. And I think in the near term, I think there's going to be a number of updates from Compass. I think the most important one is going to be on the on the feedback from the regulators on the phase 2b trial. We're going to get additional data on the adverse events, get some better characterization there. And I think hopefully, as folks kind of understand more of what's going on, I think they will, I think, hopefully have more confidence in the program, and that the FDA, it does have breakthrough designation. I don't think the FDA is kind of looking to. I don't think the FDA is going to look to be overly problematic in seeing this treatment move forward, especially with the data that's been generated to date. So that's Compass. We also, of course, we cover Mind Medicine. Our price target was unchanged at $10. In addition to update on clinical programs that were provided during the webcast on November 17th, MindMed, and in that update, their lead programs, 18MC and LSD, are on track. And these are expected, these programs should have phase 1 and 2 data, hopefully in 2022 or 2023. The most meaningful update, though, for Mind Medicine was that they had they've initiated an R-MDMA program. The lead indications here are expected to be social anxiety and autism spectrum disorder. To us, this is very interesting. We just need to see more data before we can kind of build this into our model. But it seems to us that it's a very similar strategy that Atai is taking with R-ketamine. Maybe you take all of the benefits of MDMA, and maybe you can remove all of the liabilities of MDMA, including potential for abuse liability, and maybe this becomes something that could be dosed at home. So I think it'll be really interesting to see what comes from that program. We also cover Field Trip. Here too, we also raised our price targets 25 from 20. And this, again, it reflects the read-through to the FT104 program. This is a psilocybin-like compound in preclinical development. And, on September 9th, as folks may be aware, Field Trip officially announced that they'll move FT104 forward in TRD and postpartum depression. So we updated our model for that, and we also updated it for kind of what we view as a positive read-through from COMP360. And we expect, hopefully, phase 1 data on FT104 in 2022. And, you know, in this case, you know, normally, you know, folks don't really get too excited about phase 1 data, but, you know, when you make when you have a statement around, or a kind of a hope that your treatment, or an expectation that your treatment is going to have a shorter duration of action, hopefully they'll have the same psychedelic effect as psilocybin. I think that to me is going to be the interesting piece from the phase 1 data, and hopefully starts to validate the approach with FT104. And then there's Cybin. Cybin, we actually did increase our price target from 8 to 10. Cybin had a kind of a shift in their strategy. They were originally going to maybe go with a sublingual psilocybin, although you know, there was always several programs kind of moving forward in tandem, and it looks like a program called CYB3 is going to be the one that's moving forward. This actually came out during the microdose conference in Miami on November 8th, and I thought Cybin hosted a really effective R&D update. They went through kind of the strategy and what they've seen preclinically, and it looks like here too they're, you know, sort of similar to FT104. Maybe they have some, you know, more of the benefits of psilocybin, and maybe they can all the benefits of psilocybin, and maybe they can improve the pharmacology of it. And here too, I think we need to see some of that phase 1 data to get more confidence. The phase 1 trial is expected to start in 2022, and it's possible data is going to read out by the end of 2022, but it sounds like maybe more the beginning of 2023. And then there's some of the smaller names that we cover. So first, you know, there's small pharma. Here we initiated coverage on small pharma basically during the microdose conference, and small pharma is in the lead with advancing DMT. They have a phase 2A trial that could generate data in depression and MDD in 2022, hopefully by the middle of 2022. And then, you know, more recently on November 15th, Small confirmed they'd had positive discussions with the FDA, and preparations are underway for the start of a phase 2B trial. But what I think is interesting about the design of Small Pharma's study is, you know, they're looking at 1 or 2 doses of DMT, and I think we will get some read on that, and hopefully it'll give us a sense of, you know, you know, it's a different patient population. You can't really compare these across studies. But I think we'll get a sense of, you know, do you need 1 or 2 treatments? And is DMT, which, you know, there's some, you know, speculation out there, can DMT generate as good efficacy as psilocybin? And I think maybe this data will start to tell us about that. And then there's Mindset Pharma. Here too, we didn't change our price target with this update. Our price target is unchanged at $5. Our price target on Small Pharma is $2.50, and our price target on Mindset is $5. We actually initiated Mindset November 3rd, so just ahead of the Wonderland conference. And similar to Small, you know, the feedback was very positive during the conference. Mindset's advancing MSP 1014. This is a potentially differentiated psilocybin-based analog in TRD and in end-of-life cancer angst. The phase 1 program is expected to start in 2022. And here too, I think it's very similar. I think especially when you have these earlier stage programs, and where they're, you know, kind of their statements, or you know, there's expectations around preclinical data translating to humans in ways that maybe are advantageous versus COMP360 or versus the oral solid dose psilocybin. I think there's going to be a lot of scrutiny in 2022 around these data points, and that's why we said we thought the enthusiasm would reignite in 2022, because I think folks are going to start to see that there is real clinical work being done, and there is hopefully kind of some real near-term advances being made versus what we have currently, which are first and second generation psychedelics. We're even kind of hopefully maybe even moving beyond that sooner than maybe people appreciate. And then just the last company in our coverage is Pharmacare, and Pharmacare trades in Canada. Our price target here as well is unchanged at $5 Canadian. For all these stocks, we have buy ratings. And Pharmacare had several announcements over the last couple of weeks, highlighting progress across the pipeline. They're moving forward with programs with ketamine and with a microneedle patch platform. And from the beginning, we've said that we think the microneedle patch platform is the most interesting part of the pipeline, and mainly because if you can kind of figure out a way to easily dose you know, psychedelics, I think that you maybe have an advantage in a microdosing you know, in a microdosing treatment paradigm, but also maybe in a macrodosing one as well. So I think that that platform, I think, is what's most interesting about what's going on at Pharmacare. And I think, we should have some initial data, at least hopefully, on, kind of the first phase 1 and phase 2 trials evaluating that platform in 2022. And here as well, I think that's why I think, 2022 is a really important year. I've said that from pretty much since we, initiated on Compass last year. For sure, we expected the phase 2b trial data in depression and be a key inflection point for the space. It's the largest study ever conducted with a psychedelic. It's extremely important for folks who are listening, who, you want to expand access for treatments. In the US, the best way to do that is to, number one, get these substances out of Schedule 1. So the first thing is to get them rescheduled, and in order to get them rescheduled, it has to be shown that they, could have a medical use. And so once that's demonstrated, and I think we've already seen kind of, the beginnings of that, I think once we get through the phase 3 programs with psilocybin and some of these other psychoactive substances, we can start to work through getting them, schedule at least, hopefully Schedule 3. And once that happens, and once you have actual efficacy data in all these different mood disorders, then you have a situation where, insurance companies will then evaluate, and they're going to look at this and they're going to say, we incur a certain cost for depression, certain cost for anxiety, for some of these other disorders, and is there a case to be made that psychedelics can maybe reduce that cost? And I think at the end of the day, it's up to the drug developers to demonstrate it can. And I think we saw the beginning of that with the phase 2b data. We saw a pretty profound induction of remission. And then over 3 months, we saw 25% of those patients who, by definition, had few options maintain their remission. And I think we're only going to improve on that if we add additional doses, particularly for patients who maybe weren't initially responding. I think we're only going to improve on that. And so then the case will be made, with only a few treatments a year, it's going to look like a bell curve. So you're going to have some patients who maybe only need to go once a year, some who maybe they go once or twice or 3 times and they're finished and maybe they don't need to go again. I think that's more going to be the outliers. And then, of course, you're going to have some folks where these treatments aren't very helpful. But I think what we've seen is, at least so far, a quarter of patients maintain remission. And now what we need to see is, first of all, what does the phase 3 program look like? How can we improve on what we've seen so far in the phase 2b trial with psilocybin? What does the FDA come back with? How many phase 3 studies are expected? What does that program look like? And then I think as folks kind of get more comfortable around the fact that there should be a path forward, and once we get more comfortable around that, we kind of have a better understanding of where we're going from there. I think we are going to see investors get very enthusiastic about the space once again, sort of how we were maybe 6 months ago.